think I need to speak here? Is that close enough?
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe
Your sound's going to be better than ours. Like, as in it's going to be, because you'll be closer. But we'll just make sure we go in a bit closer, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I reckon you do the intro thing. It's your turn.
Oh, okay. What if I stuff it up?
Well, we'll have to start
You
again.
guys get nervous as well.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you sound so good.
Yes. No, we do, because we stuff the first bit up all the time. We laugh at each other.
We've got so many take twos. We'll take it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Ready?
Breathing on oils.
Oils.
Once you get started, you'll be in the flow.
Welcome everyone to another Thrive Again, Your Relationship podcast. And we've got a special guest again. So this is exciting. We have Jules Girotto here, who is a conscious parenting coach. And we know that a lot of our listeners have some kids, in their lives, and we would be foolish to ignore these topics and how our relationships can actually affect our kids, because let's face it, we put so much priority on our kids, but sometimes we don't realise the implications of our own relationship as a couple and how that can actually impact our kids. And yeah, really today we wanted to open up this topic because a lot of you have reached out about this, and I certainly with our coaching, with Amy and I, we find that this is a prominent issue in terms of conflict and parenting styles, and just really wanted to clear a few things up because the woman we have here has some wisdom that she's going to share with us today on this topic. So welcome, Jules.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here.
Yeah, so good. It's exciting because Jules has been a friend of ours for a few years now, so it's nice to share her wisdom with us all. So thanks for coming.
Thank you.
So let's just start by maybe share a little bit about your journey and how you came into this field. I'm really interested in how that all came about.
So about 10 years ago, I was studying counselling, and I always thought that I wanted to work with teenage kids. But kind of towards the end of my course, I realised that it's not really where I wanted to go, and I think it was all about starting with the parents. So, I grew up in a family that was blended after my parents split up when I was quite young, and which we then became 8. So that was really challenging growing up. And my partner was, his parents were still together, but he said that he often thought, why did my parents even have kids? There was so much tension there, and he rarely saw any joy. So we talked about this a lot before we had kids. So when I was pregnant, we decided to do a parenting course. We didn't have anyone to practice on, so we practiced the skills on the dog.
Wow.
So then it kind of went from there. It wasn't conscious parenting. It was another approach. It was still gentle and relationship focused. So after I did the course, I decided to become an instructor, and then from there I was facilitating groups for a few years. But it wasn't until probably 3 years ago that I came across conscious parenting. A friend of mine had introduced me to a coach, and at that time I felt like I needed to upskill in the parenting department. So after seeing a coach for a while, and also reading Dr. Shafali's books, I was hooked. I loved what I was learning, and I thought I really want to share this with people because I thought it was necessary. So then I enrolled in one of her courses, and then that kind of took me on to do her coaching program. yeah, so that's kind of how I got back into the parenting space.
You can't get a much better teacher or coach herself as Dr. Shafali. She's so full of wisdom and she's amazing, hey? Well, I can imagine you would have taken so much from that course.
Oh, she's amazing. She's like really dynamic as well. She's straightforward, which I really like. And the other thing about her course, which you probably don't really know about it until you actually do the coaching, is her blend of like the Eastern beliefs of meditation and mindfulness. Like that's heavily rooted in her course, and then bringing together like the Western philosophy. Like I was already into meditation, and I thought to myself, like, how am I going to bring this like into my coaching? And after doing her course or the program, it was like a no-brainer. You know, she really focuses on, you know, turning the light inwards to look at what's going on for us. She's relationship based, and you know, these skills I think are like transferable to any relationship. It's not really just about your kids. It's about building a healthy relationship with your partner and people and friends and anyone really.
Yeah, it's so true. So we thought today, Jules, that we've got a particular topic that we wanted to maybe focus on during our this episode for our listeners, and it's something that I guess, like Michael was saying, that we see in our coaching, and it kind of starts to resonate because we've got children as well, and it makes us kind of question things a bit more and look into things a bit more, because sometimes in relationships we don't always think of the children and how our behaviours or how our conflicts or our arguments actually affect the kids. So the question that I had to you is that we noticed that many couples stay together even through like really unhealthy dynamics in the family, and we're wondering, is this a sound approach for the benefit of the kids? Do you think that this staying together in a relationship, even though it's not so healthy, is a great idea?
It's a good question. I don't really think that staying together benefits anyone if it's unhealthy. I think it's important to ask ourselves, like, what is the quality of our relationship like? You know, how do we show up every day? What's the energy that we bring into the family? You know, we're modelling all the time.
So true.
You know, we're modelling how to deal with our emotions. You know, the kids see that. We're modelling like what we accept in the relationship. You know, if the parents are, you know, if we're fighting all the time, like what's that showing our kids? We're also modelling like how we deal with conflict. You know, and if all they're seeing and feeling is an unhealthy relationship, then I don't think the kids are going to get benefit at all from us staying together.
I really liked, I liked all of those, but one that really is a simple thing that maybe, you know, those who are listening who are couples and you've got kids, one easy approach, it's almost like a personal audit of your relationship. Like, what energy are we bringing collectively to this household, to this environment here where our kids are effectively, you know, growing like little seedlings. So what's the soil like? What is it, you know, is it fertile or is it quite barren? And, you know, I just love that question, because we can all do that. We can actually, through a 7-day period, we can almost just go, okay, what's the energy mostly like here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even as simple as like just journaling your week, you know, how are you feeling? Like, are you burnt out? Are you, you know, are you fighting with your partner all the time? Like, are you triggered? Like, you know, these are the questions that we kind of need to ask ourselves, like, how are we actually feeling and what are we, you know, putting out there to our kids? What are they taking on?
Like, what are we tolerating? And I was just thinking about with Hannah, our oldest daughter, and she's 12, and there was a long period of time when I really didn't feel comfortable with speaking up about what I wanted personally, individually, you know, and this is coming back to me, and you know, she saw that, she witnessed that over many years, that I just was always just giving myself up for everybody else. And because I was doing that, the peace was kept in my mind. I'm keeping the peace. But the truth is that I was probably even like personally just you know, pushing away my needs. And even just that alone, you know, if my child was to model that behaviour, you know, they would probably have a good-ish relationship with some connection. But I kind of feel like I have had to move through that. And I remember she pulled me up on it and goes, Dad, just do what you want to do. Like, say what you want to say right now. Why don't you? So she actually challenged me there. And yeah, it was a real moment for me. But do you think that kids really do model what they see in us? Like, you know, our behaviours, like that one, for example?
Yeah, absolutely they do. And, you know, I saw something similar in our family with my husband. Like, if I was to say something to him, like how he would react, and then the kids would see exactly like what he was doing. So, yeah, I do think absolutely that they take on everything. They're like little sponges.
So true. I'm curious to know, Jules, on your professional level of understanding, what can happen to kids when they're brought up into, you know, ultimately really unhealthy, toxic type of environments where the parents are arguing, and I guess they're witnessing these pretty intense, aggressive arguments. What's some of the potential that the kids could take on board throughout their lifetime and obviously into the adulthood?
Well, I think if our kids are seeing us fight, then, you know, the impact of that, you know, there's a few different things that can impact them. You know, if they're fighting, you know, what are the kids seeing? Like, did they see mum and dad, you know, just arguing and never sorted out? Were they arguing behind closed doors? You know, like, if they're not seeing two people having healthy conflict, then how are they going to have healthy conflict when they get older? They end up, you know, avoiding conflict because they never really learned how to sort it out, or they didn't see their parents sort it out. You know, it's different if as a couple you have an argument and then you make up in front of them so that they can see, oh, mum and dad have got this sorted out. Like, we all argue about something, but it's really how it's dealt with and how we make up that's really important. The other thing too is that kids can be so overwhelmed by listening to their parents, and then they can start to think, you know, oh, mum has got so much on, I don't want to do anything wrong. I'll just make sure that I kind of like fly under the radar, or I'll be the good girl or the good boy, and, you know, just make sure everything's okay so it doesn't rock the boat anymore, because there's already tension within the house. And I have seen this, you know, with my partner as well. Like, that's what he would do with his mum, because she was always so stressed. So he would just make sure everything was okay. And then, you know, as you get older, you're always just making sure everybody else is okay. You're not really getting your needs met.
Such a good point, isn't it? You don't realise the long-term impact that this has on our children until we, I guess, come to this point of, you know, clients that we're coaching. We see it now. We're like, oh yeah, you're avoidant because you witnessed your mum and dad fight and you hid away, and now that's what's happening in your relationship. You're not able to approach your partner because you've learnt this mechanism to keep you safe, ultimately, from witnessing your parents arguing and not having a way to solve it or to watch them to get through that process.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of that in the couples that we work with, and also we actually even work with couples that don't really conflict, but there's something missing. So there's a danger in that, isn't there? Like if we don't conflict as well. So it's just the healthy conflict is an interesting term that you brought up, which is what we bring up as well, and also repair. So, you know, do you have any insights, maybe from your side of things, in terms of how maybe couples can have healthier conflict? Is there something there that we can pull apart from your perspective?
Yeah, look, I think not arguing is a red flag as well, because we can just push that down inside, and then we can become resentful, and that can, you know, that's toxic when we become resentful within the relationship. Like, it's hard to come back from that.
Yeah, often there's a huge wedge, and you know, we identify this in a like a discovery call or a free call or whatever, and we're just trying to get to know them. And if the wedge is too far apart, we will identify that and say, guys, I don't really think, like, I think you might be already past it. So we don't want to get to that point because it's effectively irreparable. And yeah, so for our listeners here, if you don't know how to conflict in a healthy way or even repair your conflicts afterwards, then, and if it's been a repeating pattern over and over, then something needs to change in our behaviour. Otherwise, we get to these two people under the same roof. Our kids have just absorbed like a sponge this exact thing, that this is how I'm supposed to be, or how I'm supposed to approach stress. You know, I don't know, blow off the handle like Dad does, for example. And yeah, it's imperative for couples to face this rather than just keep repeating.
Absolutely. So I think the biggest thing is that, you know, we have to become aware of our patterns, because if we're not aware of them, like, how do we fix them? I mean, I've heard someone say we're just walking patterns, just repeating the same things over and over again. And most of the time when we get into a conflict with our partners, it's not about that thing that's happened in that moment. You're thinking about the past 10 times that it's happened, and, you know, and the emotion that's added to it, you know, whether it's just a tone of, oh God, can't you pick that up, or oh, can't you do that? Yeah. Which then, even when we're talking like this, we can then do that to our kids as well.
For sure.
It just becomes a big mirror, doesn't it? We just reflect back to them exactly the same behaviour, what we're doing. And they show us the same behaviour back.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And then we get equally angry or, you know, disrupted by their behaviour.
That's right.
Because we don't like seeing that behaviour.
Yeah, and then we get triggered in ourselves because it's exactly us.
Yeah, so our kids become, in a way, a mirror for us too, right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And, you know, when, like, what are we getting triggered about? Like, when we're getting triggered, you know, it's not the outside where the trigger is, it's on the inside. But, you know, when we grew up as a kid, like, if, you know, the trigger is that they're just being silly and, like, you know, jumping and, you know, running around and yelling or whatever, like, sometimes it's a trigger for us that whatever's happened in the past is now happening then. And how were we treated by our parents? Were we told to, like, be quiet, or were we told to, you know, that was inappropriate? And so there's just like this cycle that keeps happening, but we can't see in that moment that that's just like little Jules or little Amy or Michael, you know, doing the same thing, but we're yelling at them.
Yeah.
So it's just, if we're not aware of what's happening, then, like, how do we fix it?
And it takes such a big level of awareness. You know, like, I think it's actually quite challenging. You've really, to be a conscious parent, you've really got to step up and look at your behaviours, look at your patterns, the way you speak, everything. So for those listeners out there, you know, who may be kind of in this paradigm, it's okay to go slowly and just to take each day at a time, because it is a process. You're undoing these patterns and behaviours that you've been installed since your birth. And, you know, because that's what I wanted to kind of reflect on, you know, like from 0 to 7, all of our patterns and our behaviours are instilled in us. So that computer program is running. So that's where it's important, and I think that's the most stressful years as a parent, having it, you know, new children, young children, babies, toddlers. It causes this whole, especially for mums, you know, I think stay-at-home mums, this whole overdrive of trying to protect and trying to jump into this new parenting role. And therefore those behaviours are automatic. They're so hard to break because we're already in that heightened stress response, I suppose, because we're lack of sleep, lack of probably support nowadays. We're also feel so all isolated. Mums are quite lonely, so there's so much playing into it. So I just guess I wanted to share with the listeners what you were sharing about awareness. One thing that you can start to do is start to bring awareness. Is there anything else?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the only way to bring awareness, I think this is what something that I work with every client is, getting into your body. That's the biggest thing. Like before we start anything, like what's happening for you right now in your body? Most of us,
yeah, so good.
I can't remember where I heard this, but it's like we're living from the neck up. We're completely in our heads. Like, how are we going to connect with our kids and our partners if we're in our head and not from our heart? So that would be my thing that I would be wanting to share and impart on anyone listening is learning. The first thing is just to get into your body.
Can you share some ways how to do that?
Okay,
Yeah.
so like for example, let's just say morning, getting out of the house. You've got lots of things happening. You're in your head. Okay, I've got to. You've got a list of things. You're trying to get the kids and everything ready for school. Most of the time, yes, we are in our heads, but most of the time, the feeling comes in our body. We can feel the anxiety, we can feel the stress, but we ignore it. So even just starting small by when you feel that anxiousness inside, take yourself, even just out of the room, sit down, even if it's just for 1 minute. Take yourself to the toilet for 1 minute and just to start breathing and getting into your body, because then you can operate from a different place. When you've got too many things happening in your head and you're just rush, nothing really seems to end well. The kids suffer and all they feel is the stress and the tension. My son came up to me one time and said, "Mum, I don't really normally ask this, but are you in your body?"
Oh wow, yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
good.
They feel the tension.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is that they sense that they're part of your list.
Yes.
So they're a thing that needs to be ticked off. And how insensitive actually would that be to receive that energy? Over time they would be conditioned to, I'm just going to get this thing done. I've just got to, get my school bag, get my things together and whatever, and then I just jump in the car at the exact right time and we just do this thing. But if you just took a moment of dropping into your body and a little concern comes up, I know with our kids sometimes it's like, hey, my boy for example, he's got a hearing aid. So, he's concerned about, maybe the battery's sitting at about 20%, I'm going to school. For someone who's in their head, they might dismiss that and just go, oh, whatever, you just need to deal with it, but all he really wants in that moment is for you to just acknowledge his concern with some presence. And if you did that and you addressed his problem with your voice, with your words, with your engaging in the eye, then what you're doing is you're putting that list to the side and saying, you are the most important thing right now for me.
Absolutely. And I feel worthy of your time. Kids really, they want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to feel like they're worthy. We can, rush around all the time and they don't feel that.
Of course not. And that's the thing, I think that, I kind of empathise with those parents who are like super stressed out and they've got a busy life. I feel they're very blessed in the community that we're in. Our friends are quite conscious parents, but for the everyday family, this is a big shift, to put themselves kind of aside for a moment and just give that presence to that child. It's kind of a big task, but I love the fact that that simple strategy that you shared, and I'm going to bring that back up because I feel like everyone needs to take this away, because I probably need to as well, is get in your body. Like just take that moment to just check in and get out of your head and back into your body through some deep breaths, some conscious awareness. I really love that. Is there any other sort of tips or strategies or ways that you can kind of help parents to shift a little bit more into their self-awareness to be better parents?
I really like doing the check-in, like in the morning, and it still kind of intertwines with the are you in your body, but you know, looking back at you know, what has happened throughout the day, like you know, how am I feeling today? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling overwhelmed? What can I kind of put to the side that can be dealt with later rather than right now? You know, and looking back at the situations that happened throughout the day, even in terms of what's happening with our kids. I think journaling is really good for that. Even if you just did it for a week or 2 weeks, just to look back at what you're triggered by, what's happening with the kids, how are you reacting, how are they reacting, and just keeping a little journal, and you will notice that it's the same thing most of the time happening. So that helps you then to start looking at the patterns that you need to work on.
That's so powerful, because I witnessed this with Amy, and Amy went on a journey of maybe pulling apart her own patterns before I did that. And I watched her go through that process from the sidelines a little bit. I was very unconscious in my ways, but I still was interested in what she's doing. At the time I thought, oh yeah, that's just something that chicks do, you know, they just journal. But what she was speaking about to me was that I just hate how I get angry at the kids. I hate how I just fly off the handle at things, and I look back after 2 or 3 minutes and I go, oh, I wish I hadn't have said that or done that or reacted in this way. You did that, I reckon, for a couple of years. And I think it just starts with just this process, what you're talking about, because now Amy's so mindful, you know, in terms of her approach. And of course she slips up still every now and then, but she's got it, she can see it. It's like you've caught it, and I can watch that part of me when it wants to jump out, or when it does jump out, I can go, ooh, got you.
Absolutely. And I think just adding to that, you know, we just keep reacting the same way over and over because it's just like ingrained in us. Like, okay, the kids do this, we get annoyed and we react like this. But until you start realizing, okay, hang on a second, I've reacted like that, that hasn't ended well.
Yeah.
You know, the kids are crying, you're stressed out, you feel guilty at the end of the day, you're beating yourself up because you're a bad parent.
Yes.
You know, these are the things that we need to start looking at, because how are we going to fix them?
Yes, that's right, exactly. You can't fix them until you start to change them, and that's react. You're reacting. You're doing it over and over again. You know, and that's the important part. We need to actually rewire a whole different way. You know.
Absolutely. So when our kids are, you know, asking 20 times for something and we're getting frustrated, like you can feel, so that's about being in your body, like feeling, okay, this is coming up for me right now, okay, right, you know, I can respond like this because last time I reacted like that, where did it leave me? You know, otherwise we're going back to the same thing. It's so powerful. It's been so. This is not easy.
Exactly.
At all. Like, I'm not even pretending that it's easy. Like, I work on it every single day.
Yes. It's a daily, hourly, you know, with your kids practice, isn't it? It's
100%. Like, I do this work and I want to do this work mainly for myself because I need it the most. But if I can share little bits along the way and just help people change one thing to really change their relationship with their kids, then I'm happy. If I can do that.
So good.
I was going to ask, do you think sometimes that us as adults, grown-ups, that we sometimes think that we're the centre of the universe, and that, you know, everything around us that we see, we need to change in order to make us happy? And because we live in that, then sometimes we just, we start to push the blame out, and then we don't actually we don't realise how selfish we're being, and that it's only to do with my needs and what I want, and then that can flow into kind of parenting, I guess, and how we parent. Is that true?
Oh, absolutely. I think as humans, we're conditioned to put ourselves first. We don't normally wake up in the morning and start thinking about all the things I can do for somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, hang on a second, I'll just try and get their needs met before my own.
Yeah.
Not really.
No.
And yeah, absolutely. I think.
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking of this also because I just wanted to play out this scenario. Let's just say you've got a couple that have been together for 10 years, and they've got two youngish kids, say, I don't know, 5 and 7, something like that. And their relationship it's not great. At best, it's probably just sitting on the edge of the rocks. They maybe have had a breakup in the past and they come together again and they're just like, no, we need to really just stay together for the kids' sake. We just get these scenarios all the time where you get a couple that thinks that they're doing a service to the kids by just remaining under the same roof, even though there's a high element of toxicity in the environment. I just wanted to speak into this issue because this is the main body of maybe what we wanted to talk about. Yeah, and just maybe talk about some of the ramifications of that, and whether that's a good idea maybe.
Can I just add in there before you jump in, Jules? But I feel like it's kind of just totally reverts back to what you were saying, that we're the centre of the world. We believe that ourselves are the most important thing. So we're always... I've probably stolen your thing, sorry. But you're always... Yeah, I'm a thief. But you're always doing what's best for you, And I think we talked about that before we started the podcast, but yeah, share that into that a bit more.
Yeah, look, if you're thinking, it's, some parents may be thinking, oh look, it's too hard to break up, or it's going to cost too much money, or how are we going to logistically work this out? Well, if the most important people, little humans, kids, children, whatever you call them, if that truly is your focus, then like anything that you want to do on a personal level, you'll make it happen. It will be hard, absolutely, but I think the main thing to think about is if we can do it with kindness and love and respect between each other, then the kids will be okay.
And I think it's more of a benefit for them as well, isn't it? When you've got that, when you've got the parents that are thinking of the kids first and not themselves, then that's going to be a benefit in the bigger picture, because everyone's going to be a bit more stable and a bit more overall happiness in the family.
And I find this is tricky for a lot of people because humans, in our makeup, we've talked about this before, is that we tend to always prioritise avoiding pain before moving towards pleasure. And the pain might be short-term pain, it may well be, but it seems to me if we've got that much of a gap between us and there's toxicity in the house, then the long-term ramifications is going to be a lot more pain, not only for the kids but for yourself, and potentially even birthing new traumas that now we need to deal with and now our kids need to unravel whenever they get around to it one day in their life.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's important to ask ourselves the question of how do we want to show up for our kids? What kind of a relationship do we want them to see? And also when they're growing up and when they're getting into their own relationships, what would you want for your kids?
So true.
And what do you want to see their relationship look like? Do you want to see them look like yours if it's toxic? Not really.
Such a good question. I like that. You've got to think of the bigger picture, and that's the hard part I think we struggle with, is getting out of that environment and looking at the big picture of what you're potentially creating for yourself, number one, if you're in a toxic relationship, and like Michael said, and the children. What are you showing them? Yeah, I like that.
What do you want them to say about you and your relationship? Oh,
Yeah.
look, mum and dad, they argued a lot, but they made a decision to separate because it was healthier. Or mum and dad argued a lot, and they were just so selfish and they were unhappy. And why did they, why they even stay together? Like, what do we want our kids to be saying about us, and how do we want them to feel?
Yeah, it takes a bit to transport yourself to that future reality, but if you do that, it's almost harrowing, like, to really think about it. It's almost like for an adult to transport him or herself to the eulogy, and what is it that you really want people to speak about you? Like, how do you want to be spoken about? Maybe is it about the things that you did, or what you accomplished, or who you are as a person, how you showed up in the world? Were you actually present with the people around you? Did you share love and insight and coming from a place of love? And if we do that, then maybe that would help in our parenting, because maybe we would then drop into our body before we engage with our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to for our kids to, at the end of our parenting, or when they've moved out, is that that they say, oh, I really felt heard by you, Mum. I really felt like you put my needs first, and also looked after yourself, and you didn't accept things that weren't right.
Absolutely, you're teaching them so much respect for themselves, aren't you? That's so massive.
Yeah, that's huge, isn't it? Oh, I love that point. Is that, Mum didn't tolerate rubbish either. Dad didn't tolerate it, but they were respectful with each other. They didn't tolerate it. They spoke up what needed to be spoken about, and maybe there was some conflict there, but they resolved it after.
Absolutely, and boundaries is huge in everything that we do. If we're wanting to have the best relationship, or we're wanting what we want for our kids, like, okay, so that's our goal. What boundary do we need to put around our everyday situations to reach that goal?
Yes.
Like, do we want our kids to, experience healthy relationships, and do we want to model that? Okay, well, what do we need to do every day?
Yes.
To get to that goal?
Yeah.
The boundaries is huge.
Yeah. Maybe we could do a whole episode on that.
We could.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I think should we wrap it up?
Yeah.
I reckon that's been amazing insight, and I just want to give like a little brief kind of summary for those listeners, because I feel like if you're in this position, if you're in like a relationship that maybe you're not super happy with, there's two ways ultimately that you could go with it. You could either sit down with your partner and acknowledge that things aren't that great in the relationship, and that you need to improve for the benefit of yourself, but also the benefit of the children. Because I think what happens in those types of relationships is we forget the impact we're having on the kids when we're in arguments, and when we're not even in arguments, when we're not even speaking, when we're disconnected, when we're living two separate lives. All of this stuff plays into it. So you can either sit down with your partner and say, hey, do you want to work on this? Are you willing and able to show up for the relationship and show up for your children in a better way, and go and get the help that you need? Or are we actually better off, for the benefit of the kids, to separate, in a peaceful, respectful way? And again, you may need help to do that. You may need someone to kind of guide through how that's going to look and what that's going to be. But I think they're the crossroads. And I really urge listeners, if you are resonating with this and you're thinking, geez, maybe we are impacting our kids without knowing it, then start to reflect, start to do some of the tools that Jules has, shared with us that have been super helpful, and look at the bigger picture of what you're creating in your life, in the relationships.
Absolutely. And I think, yes, there is two ways to go about it, but they don't have to be negative.
No, that's true.
If you get the right help, and start thinking about these things, it can be very positive for everybody.
We've seen some beautiful conscious separations lately, and even with friends. And you know, it's way above that level of, you know, how people use the word amicable.
Yes.
It's way above that. You know, I mean that there's conversations a couple of times a week about how we can better turn up for our son, for our daughter. You know, hey, can we work together? We want to make this harmonious. So there's a desire to make it harmonious rather than, oh, you did this to me, so you're going to suffer. So we can move into that space, we can do that. But yeah, I do want to really thank you, Jules, and I'm definitely going to start to do some more journaling. I've been going on a bit of a journey myself in just unraveling some behavioural patterns, so I'm going to get back into a lot more journaling now, so thank you for that. And if the listeners really want to find out more about you and your work, and maybe even potentially learning some conscious parenting skills, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can go to my website, it's julesgirotto.com, or you can find me on Instagram.
Okay, can you spell that out, so just so that the listeners...
Jules, Girotto is GIROTTO.com.
Perfect.
We'll also put it in the show notes as well. So if you're wanting to track down Jules and her amazing wisdom, and she's got 2 beautiful boys, we forgot to mention that, but yeah, so she's an amazing parent as well. So yeah, make sure you follow her stuff for more information. And thank you so much for listening, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been great.
Pleasure. All right, we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
That's bloody good.
Look at that.
High five.
Yeah.
Woo,
That was
I
nice.
was a bit nervous in the beginning, I was like,
No, it
Ah, yeah,
sounded
good.
fine.
Couldn't tell.
Yeah, I was going to open that window. It sounded really good, Jules. I really like